Biography 15, Marco Polo, the Venetian Pathfinder. Long before Marco Polo became one of history's most famous travelers, he was a young boy growing up in medieval Venice, a city filled with ships, merchants, foreign goods, and stories from distant lands. Marco Polo was born around 1254 in Venice, a powerful maritime republic in what is today Italy. His world was shaped by ships, markets, merchants, and stories from distant lands. Venice was not only a beautiful city of canals, it was also a center of trade between Europe and the wider world. Marco came from a prosperous merchant family, and his father, Niccolo Polo, and his uncle, Maffeo Polo, were already experienced traders in Asia. Sometimes he has been called Marco Emilio Polo, but history remembers him most simply as Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler who helped Europe imagine Asia in a new way. Marco's childhood was marked by absence and expectation. His mother died early, and his father and uncle spent long years away on business journeys across Asia. Because of this, Marco was likely raised by extended family, perhaps by an aunt, in Venice. Like many young men from merchant families, he probably learned practical skills: reading, writing, counting, languages, and the art of trade. He grew up in a city where news arrived with ships, and every port carried rumors of strange kingdoms, valuable goods, and dangerous roads. This atmosphere prepared him for a life much larger than the streets of Venice. In 1271, Marco left Venice with his father and uncle on a journey that would change his life. They traveled across the Silk Road. But this name can be misleading for learners. It was not one single road. It was a vast network of land and sea routes connecting Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia, India, China, and beyond. As a map of the Silk Road would show, these routes stretched like threads across deserts, mountains, cities, and seas. Merchants carried silk, spices, porcelain, jewels, paper money, and ideas across this wide network. The journey was long and dangerous, filled with harsh climates, political instability, and endless uncertainty. Yet for Marco, it became a school of observation, patience, and survival. After years of travel, Marco reached the Mongol Empire, then at its height under Kublai Khan. The Mongol world created unusual connections across Eurasia, making trade and cultural exchange easier than before. Kublai Khan, ruler of a vast empire, noticed Marco's intelligence, curiosity, and diplomatic skill. Marco spent about 17 years in the Mongol Empire and served as an emissary, a person sent on special missions as a representative. He traveled widely through China, Southeast Asia, and other regions. In these years, he saw courts, cities, customs, goods, and systems of government that were almost unimaginable to many Europeans. Marco was not only a traveler, he was also a careful observer. He paid attention to details that later made his stories vivid and memorable. He described wealthy cities, organized roads, powerful rulers, and unusual inventions. Europeans were especially surprised by his descriptions of paper money and coal, which some people imagined as burning stones, dark rocks that could catch fire and give heat. For an audience in the 1200s, this idea must have sounded almost magical. These things seemed incredible, even extravagant, to people who had never seen them. Because his stories seemed so strange, many listeners were skeptical. His book became known as Il Milione, a title linked to the idea that Marco told 1,000,000 amazing stories, or, to doubters, 1,000,000 lies. The dramatic turning point in Marco's legacy came after he returned to Venice in 1295. A few years later, during conflict between Venice and Genoa, he was captured and imprisoned in Genoa around 1298 to 1299. There, the rhythm of his life changed completely. No longer crossing deserts or entering royal courts, Marco found himself inside a prison cell, surrounded by stone walls instead of open roads. In that slower, darker place, he met Rustichello da Pisa, who helped turn Marco's memories into a written work known as The Travels of Marco Polo. The setting was powerful, a prisoner of war, far from the open roads of Asia, dictating stories of palaces, caravans, emperors, and distant oceans. What began as captivity became the birthplace of one of the most famous travel books in history. Still, Marco Polo's account has always raised questions of veracity, meaning whether something is truthful or accurate. Some readers wondered why he did not mention certain famous things, such as the Great Wall, tea, or foot binding. But the Great Wall mystery needs careful explanation. The massive stone wall that many people imagine today mostly belongs to the Ming Dynasty period, later than Marco's travels. To expect him to describe that later version would be an anachronism, a historical mistake where something is placed in the wrong time. Even so, debates continue about whether Marco saw everything himself or heard some stories from others. Marco Polo died in Venice on January 8, 1324, but his influence continued for centuries. His book shaped European ideas about Asia, inspired mapmakers such as those connected with the Catalan Atlas and the Fra Mauro map, and later influenced explorers like Christopher Columbus, who carefully studied his copy. Today, Marco is remembered as a pioneer of global exploration, intercultural communication, and travel writing. His life connects Venice, the Mongol Empire, the Silk Road, and the imagination of Europe. Whether every detail was perfect or not, his story opened a window between civilizations and made distant worlds feel closer.